Eastwood, Clint, behind the steely stare and unyielding on-screen persona, the legendary actor and director who rose from modest origins to dominate Hollywood, has a life filled with adversity, ranging from a childhood interrupted by repeated travels to the psychological effects of early career challenges. Eastwood's journey was far from easy. He suffered from anxiety attacks, a tragic plane crash, and the tragic death of his father. Nevertheless, he managed to create a legacy as one of the most renowned figures in cinema. Did Clint Eastwood's turbulent past shape the legend he became? Read on to learn the untold story. On May 31, 1930, little Clint Eastwood was born at St. Francis Hospital in San Francisco, shocking the nurses with a heavy 11-pound weight and earning him the nickname Samson. His parents, Clinton Sr. and Ruth Nay Runner, had a family tree with English, Scottish, Dutch, German, and Irish ancestry. Somewhere in his family history, Clint even had a Mayflower passenger. Later, in the 1930s, a younger sister named Jean Bernhard joined the family. In an attempt to maintain a stable career, Clint's father worked as a salesman and even briefly as a detective in San Francisco. The Eastwoods moved frequently during that decade, but by 1940, they had settled in affluent Piedmont, California. Forget about the stories of the Depression. Sadly, Clint occasionally forgets that the Eastwoods are a nice place to live, with a swimming pool, a country club membership, and all the other benefits. Clint's poor grades at Piedmont Junior High forced him to catch up with summer classes, and his rebellious streak really erupted at Piedmont High School. His actions, including the flaming effigy on the school lawn and the offensive message written on the scoreboard, led to his immediate expulsion. Oakland Technical High offered him a new beginning. Though he could have been a good basketball player, Clint preferred solo pursuits, worked on car engines, even learned about aircraft maintenance, and became so good at the piano that a friend remembers his fingers literally bleeding from practice. Interestingly, his teachers noticed a spark of talent and encouraged him to participate in school plays, but Clint just wasn't interested. After his father moved to Seattle in early 1949, Clint found a temporary home in Oakland with his friend Harry Pendleton. Then, by chance, he was invited to a party in Malibu, where he met film director Howard Hawks. This was a major turning point in his life, but before Hollywood, there was real work logging in Springfield, Oregon, a stint as a lifeguard after receiving his Red Cross certification, and even playing ragtime piano in an Oakland bar. Talk about a wild start. Did raw talent and lucky breaks pave his path, or was destiny guiding him all along? Keep watching. Things are about to get much more interesting. Clint Eastwood was enlisted into the Army in 1951 for the Korean War, but instead of serving on the front lines, he ended up at Fort in California. His job as a swimming teacher was safe, but life has a way of upending plans. Hitching a ride back to base from Seattle on September 30, 1951, turns out to be a jinxed flight. The weather is poor from the start, and then things get extremely bad, with the plane's back door flying open. The pilot has no choice but to abandon the plane when the fuel runs out, lost in the fog miles from the California coast. Sharks are a real threat here, but Clint and the pilot inflate rafts and start desperately paddling towards the shore. The ocean fights the waves, overturning Clint's raft, forcing him to swim a grueling 2 or 4 miles, depending on who is telling the story. This is where his Army gig becomes life or death, and his job as a swimming instructor may be what gives him the edge to survive this tired and confused situation. Clint struggles with hallucinations in the bioluminescent water, but he manages to survive and end up running into the pilot, who miraculously also survived years later. Clint stars in Escape from Alcatraz. He plays Frank Morris, an inmate who daringly swims across the frigid San Francisco Bay to escape the notorious island prison. It seems as though escaping death gave Clint the grit that makes his on-screen persona. Escape is incredibly realistic, but the military life is all work. Clint has a side job at a sugar company to supplement his meager $67 monthly salary, and there's that rumored romance with an officer's daughter. Even so, a trip to Carmel ignited something inside him. Future TV stars Richard Long and Martin Milner are among his military friends. In the 1970s and early 1980s, Clint Eastwood traded in his spurs for a bad B and the dusty plains for city streets. During this time, Dirty Harry, the famous San Francisco cop who wasn't afraid to break the law to get his man, was introduced. The theme of the rogue with a badge persisted in movies like Thunderbolt and Lightfoot and The Gauntlet, where the lines between morality and legality were blurred. With the Every Which Way movies, which starred his orangutan friend Clyde, Eastwood also displayed his humorous side. This period came to an end with the terrifying Escape from Alcatraz, in which Clint demonstrated that his acting abilities extended beyond the heroes he could portray. An experienced mountain climber named David Knowles was needed as a stunt double for a few more shots of a climbing sequence in the 1975 thriller The Eiger Sanction. He teamed up with fellow climber Mike Hoover to accomplish the task, and they were able to get the footage. However, disaster struck when an unexpected rock slide sent a boulder hurtling towards the men as they stood on a ledge. In a heartbreaking detail, David Knowles sadly lost his life, while Mike Hoover suffered a serious fracture. One of the climbers who survived recounted the shock as saying, "We flew up to that same location, and there was the scene that we had been faking for 2 days." The horrifying scene was a mirror image of one the crew had captured just days earlier. Clint Eastwood was devastated by the news of Dave Knowles' death hanging on the end of the rope. He felt responsible for the death and was so distraught that he almost gave up on the project. But his crew, who understood the risks involved in filmmaking, encouraged him to continue because they thought it was the best way to honor David Knowles' memory and dedication. Eastwood's characters changed in the 1980s and early 1990s. They were no longer merely strong. Instead, they were burdened. In Firefox, he was a pilot who was plagued by PTSD, while in Tight RPP, he was a police officer who was tortured by the murderer he was after. Eastwood's characters fought both their inner demons and exterior foes. This theme persisted in White Hunter Black Heart, where a filmmaker grew obsessed with an elephant hunt, and The Rookie, where his case-obsessed behavior harmed those around him. The pinnacle of this period was Unforgiven. Clint went back to his roots in the West, but this time he was an outlaw who was haunted by his violent past. The 2000s and beyond brought us the grumpy age. In Space Cowboys, Clint Eastwood plays an elderly astronaut who finally gets his chance to travel to space. In Bloodwork, he is a retired profiler whose health issues prevent him from hunting down a murderer. However, Eastwood really rose to fame in movies like Million Duel Baby, in which he plays a reluctant boxing trainer, and Gran Torino, in which a racist veteran finds unexpected redemption. His most recent film, Cry This Time, Macho carries on the concept of the sour old man by portraying a weathered horseman traveling through rural Mexico. The personal life of Clint Eastwood is as dramatic as any movie he has directed. His first marriage to Maggie Johnson in 1953 appeared to be a desire for stability, but Eastwood was first hesitant to settle down. However, the domestic bliss quickly faded, restlessness set in, and extramarital affairs became a recurrent theme. Despite Maggie's knowledge of these transgressions, the couple continued to live together for a while, even welcoming their own children, Kyle and Allison, into the world. However, the cracks in the facade were becoming more noticeable. The first result of this philandering lifestyle was a daughter, Lori Murray, born from a secret affair and placed for adoption without Eastwood's knowledge. Years later, another affair produced Kimberly L. By 1979. There were circulating reports of Eastwood's affair with co-star Sandra Locke, which ultimately led to their breakup. The fallout from Eastwood's love decisions went well beyond the news. There have been contradictory stories about Eastwood's connection with her father. She has talked of having a deep friendship at times and feeling abandoned and frustrated at other times. She has even claimed to have begged for a closer relationship. Eastwood's personal history is further complicated by the story of Lori Murray, who was adopted as a baby. It is unclear whether her biological father actively sought her out or was unaware of her existence prior to her discovery in the 1990s, but Eastwood accepted her after she reached out. The revelation, the relationship between Eastwood and stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis started working on the Rawhide set, a relationship that reportedly lasted 14 years and produced a daughter named Kimber, although Eastwood says he didn't realize she was his at first. Later, Sandra Locke entered the picture in 1972, but Eastwood was still with Johnson, and Locke was in a platonic marriage with her childhood friend. Their chemistry began in The Outlaw. This habit of keeping his children hidden would recur. Josie Wales and Eastwood had a passionate but turbulent relationship. Locke said that Eastwood forced her to get abortions against his will, and that their two-way relationship was toxic. While Locke was still in the picture, Eastwood met flight attendant Giselle Reeves. Their affair produced 2 children, Scott and Catherine, and around the same time he met actress Frances Pfizer. Despite Locke's presence, they had a happy romance that ended in a daughter named Francesca. However, Eastwood's secret children with Reeves were strained by past affairs, and paparazzi photos suggested infidelity. Eventually, this relationship also ended, and the news anchor Eastwood first fell in love with Dena Ruiz in 1992. Their whirlwind romance ended in 1996, and they had a daughter named Morgan shortly after. However, a reality show that featured Dena clashed with his private nature, and things spiraled out of control. Dena sought support from an old friend, Scott Pfizer, while Eastwood started dating his ex-wife, Erica Tomlinson Fisher, in 2013. The marriage officially collapsed, but as one chapter ends, Eastwood fell in love with hostess Christina Sandersa in 2015. The couple has kept their relationship private, even attending events with Eastwood's ex-wife and kids, suggesting a cordial maturity in his later years. Concerns about Clint Eastwood's health have been raised after he hasn't been seen in public for more than 450 days. His last appearance was at the @Ante Prom golf tournament in February 2022, an occasion he frequently attends, and which is close to his home. His absence from the 2023 tournament, in which his son Scott was competing, further heightened anxiety among those close to him. However, Eastwood put an end to these rumors last month when he made a rare appearance at Jane Goodall's conservationist event in his hometown of Carsmell by the Sea. He was spotted on the Georgia set last November, obviously involved in the work. Eastwood maintains a low-fat, high-protein diet and is mindful of his cholesterol levels, a lesson likely learned from his father, who tragically died young from cardiovascular disease. Actor Scott Eastwood credits his father as his fitness inspiration. He was seen grinning, chatting with Goodall, and appearing in good spirits. Photos of the 93-year-old legend show him looking healthy, with longer hair, a full beard, and a casual yet stylish outfit. It's evident that Clint Eastwood refuses to let his age define him, whether he's acting, directing, or just spending an afternoon with other environmentalists. Scott disclosed that Clint encouraged him to exercise weights as a teenager and adheres to a similar strict diet that emphasizes nutrients over indulgence.